Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Fellow Show. I'm your host, the Fellow KGB. You can follow me on Twitter at the Fellow KGB. And today, December 26th, it's 10 a.m. Central Time here. We're gonna be going over the player prop bets that we typically do on Saturday mornings. I'm just doing this solo today. Our good friend Jesse's gonna be traveling for the holidays, so I think I got this one. We did kind of talk off the air a little bit about some of the matchups and the players that we did like, but I just want to recap real quick. On the season so far, we are 59 and 54-92 total, but we've been noticing a trend with our touchdown prop bets. Those have been the big hitters here. So 16 of 22 on the players that we call out to score touchdowns. So that's been where we have been making the most of our money. And we're going to just start basically with today's games first, and then we'll kind of just roll through the rest of them. But starting on, this is, again, DraftKings Sportsbook. We're looking at Tampa Bay and Detroit. That game's at 12 o'clock Central Time today. There's going to be a lot of touchdowns in this one, guys. So, of course, Leonard Fournette's probably the favorite to score here at minus 125. I don't mind that one. Even though it is minus 125, you can still get a decent return on this one. And if Tampa Bay's on the 1 or the 2 yard line, there's a good chance Leonard Fournette's running it in. So, really like the Leonard Fournette call today. Detroit Lions are amongst the worst teams against the running backs in terms of fantasy points allowed. Let me just show you guys real quick here using FF today. I believe there's a stat where Detroit has allowed, I think it's been 2 or more touchdowns to running backs in like 7 of the last 9 games. So just filter real quick by touchdowns. The Chiefs allowed the fewest, but Detroit is up there, and they are tied with the Texans and the Raiders for the most rushing touchdowns allowed. And then the Lions have also allowed 8 receiving touchdowns, so 25 total TDs to the running backs. Really solid chance here for Mr. Leonard Fournette to get into the end zone in this one. And then you got to think, like Tampa Bay, their offense has been kind of frustrating for a long time now. Basically, ever since Antonio Brown got there, they haven't really, hit their stride. So I do expect Tampa Bay to put up some points against Detroit today, a team where everything kind of clicks against the Lions. So I do expect this to be a get-right game for the Tampa Bay offense as we're getting headed to the playoffs here. So Mike Evans, really good odds here at plus 100 for a touchdown. You do have Chris Godwin down here at plus 150. His yardage outputs have been low, so I don't know if I like betting on those, but he did catch a touchdown last week, like we said, and he's plus 150 to score, so that's a pretty good return there. So I would be confident in saying Leonard Fournette's probably going to score today, and then one of Mike Evans, Godwin, or maybe even both score today. Those are the top 3 guys for Tampa Bay that have the chance to score. I do like Rob Gronkowski plus 130, Antonio Brown plus 130. I think he just had his first touchdown last week, so maybe he does get things rolling and stacks two games in a row here. But I think I'm going to lean towards probably Mike Evans being the one guy here for a receiver that I'm going to bet on. Just Tom Brady's been hooking up with him all season when they get to that goal line too. So I do like Mike Evans. I do like Leonard Fournette. And then just to flip it and look at the Lions side real quick, there's really only 3 guys I think I'd be comfortable betting with for them to score touchdowns. That's going to be DeAndre Swift. That's going to be Marvin Jones. And that's going to be TJ Hawkinson. So when we were looking at this the last couple of days, we did notice that Tampa Bay is probably going to be without their top cornerback, Carlton Davis, which could open things up for Marvin Jones. That could be a nice spot there. But otherwise, TJ Hawkinson at plus 150. If we go back to FF today here and we just filter by the tight ends, Tampa Bay is one of the more generous teams, because I usually look at this through a fantasy football lens. So Tampa Bay does allow the 7th most points to the tight end position, 14.5 points. If we just filter by touchdowns allowed, Tampa Bay's up there at 8 touchdowns, the most being 13 by the Jets. But 8 touchdowns, on a 16-game season, that's almost every other game here. So let's just take a quick look and see what Tampa Bay's been doing. So last week they let Hayden Hurst score. The week before, Irv Smith. And then it was a couple weeks, but then Colin Thompson, Josh Hill, Adam Troutman got, two of them from the Saints here. So Tampa Bay does allow a decent amount of touchdowns to the tight ends. So if you're interested in getting a guy in the Lions group, maybe TJ Hawkinson at plus 150, kind of like what we're thinking here. Tampa Bay should score points. Detroit should have to throw the ball and come from behind. So DeAndre Swift could catch one. Marvin Jones, yes, probably. And then TJ Hawkinson. So I'm probably more leaning into the Tampa Bay side, but if you did have to pick a Detroit line, I think all those guys are pretty interesting. And then I guess anyone else here, like crazy odds here, Scotty Miller at plus 500. He's kind of a low snap kind of desperation play there, but plus 500, you could put a little bit on that and see what happens. And then let's pop over to the passing stats real quick. So Stafford 270, Brady 315. Those are both kind of high. Maybe you do take the over with Tom Brady here. He did throw for like 390 yards last week, and it's Detroit. So if you want to take an over here, maybe Tom Brady at 315. That's a super high number, but it is the Lions. People have been betting the under at 315, minus 130. So if you wanted to take that, I typically like the odds where they're like minus 112, minus 125 and lower. But minus 130, that seems likely to happen, right? So maybe take the under on Tom Brady passing yards. Let's look at touchdown passes. They got Tom Brady over 2.5, under 2.5 here. People have been hitting that. So they think he's only going to throw 2 touchdowns today. And then Stafford at the under here, they're thinking he does not hit 2, which is interesting. Looking at the rushing yards real quick. DeAndre Swift at 45.5 plus 100. Again, Tampa Bay is one of the better run defenses, so I don't know if I like that number. AP 14.5. He doesn't get enough play time to be trusted. Leonard Fournette 65.5. He's not going to get a lot of yards unless he like truly breaks a big touchdown. So let's just pull up Leonard Fournette's numbers real quick. Where is Mr. Fournette? RB 47 on the year. And then I just always filter by PPR purposes here. So we're looking at Leonard Fournette's output the last few games here. So 14 for 49 against Atlanta last week. Ronald Jones had been playing. I don't know if he played in that Kansas City game. I can't remember. He did play in that Kansas City game. He caught a touchdown. So Leonard Fournette really hasn't rushed that highly before. 52 yards, 50 yards, 103 yards. But it really depends on the volume. If you tell me he's going to get to maybe 15, 16 carries, I would consider it. But I just don't think there's enough here for me to want to bet into it. If I were to take one, I'd take an under. But if you watch our show, you know we prefer the overs. It's more fun to root for someone to succeed, I think. And then just looking at the receiving yards real quick, I noticed Mike Evans wasn't on the list. That's kind of a bummer. But for the Tampa Bay side, Gronk at 33.5, Chris Godwin 58.5, Braid 20.5, Fournette 19.5. People are hitting this one at plus 130, or they're actually not hitting this one. They're hitting the under here. So plus 131 for Leonard Fournette. He had 16 yards, 10 yards, 9, 11. He hasn't hit that since week 9. So 41 in week 9, 47 in week 7. So that one doesn't really feel all that great here. Maybe the under, but it's minus 165. I don't think that interests us that much. DeAndre Swift, 24.5. Marvin Jones, 64.5. Antonio Brown, 61.5. And then TJ Hawkinson, 46.5. I know TJ Hawkinson disappointed a lot of us last week, so not really feeling his over. If anything, I do like the Hawkinson touchdown better. And the reason I like the touchdown better is because you see all the minuses here. The touchdowns usually give you a plus 100 situation to kind of capitalize on. So nothing really sticks out here. Like we said, Chris Godwin had been, pretty low in yardage department the last 2 weeks. I think he's been under 40 the last 2 games. So that would be kind of betting against the grain here. But I could see Godwin. I could see Evans having a good day. I'm disappointed there's no Evans line here. But for me in this Tampa Bay game, I think there's going to be touchdowns on Tampa Bay's side. So I'm going to probably lean into that matchup, and we'll hop over to another game here. Let me see what else we got. So the next game on the slate today is the 49ers and the Arizona Cardinals. So we're watching this one closely. I think Chase Edmonds is going to play, but he's been limited. He missed like several days of practice, and he's been limited. So there's a chance that his snap counts, we could watch those. But for touchdowns in this game and how this game's going to go, maybe Kenyon Drake sneaks into the end zone. DeAndre Hopkins has been hot. He scored a touchdown last week as well. It feels like a good bet for a Kyler Murray rushing touchdown. Let me actually see. I think it's been a while since Kyler Murray has rushed for a touchdown, but I've noticed his output has gone up lately. So he had that kind of string of 5 attempts here back when he is dealing with a shoulder injury, but 13 for 47 the week before, 8 for 29, and a touchdown. So I do think Kyler Murray rushing touchdown feels like a pretty good bet here at plus 110. I'm interested in that. You throw 20 piece on that, you're going to win $22 back. So that one is kind of fun. Jeff Wilson on the 49er side at plus 115. He's actually, I think, scored in back-to-back games as well. And because we know there is no Raheem Mostert, I think that that could potentially be where I'm looking for a touchdown on the 49er side. So, yes, back-to-back touchdowns. And I got to think he's going to get, upwards of 16 plus carries in this one. So I'm pretty excited about Mr. Jeff Wilson. Looks like we got the fellow JGM hanging out with us. Sorry you couldn't be here today, but I'll hold the fort down, man. Safe travels I can't remember where you're going, but safe travels, man. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why there's no Mike Evans receiving yards, but I'm definitely taking that Mike Evans touchdown today. I think you got to. He was so close, I think, in scoring like 2 touchdowns last week. So Mike Evans does feel pretty hot, and Jesse, the fellow JGM, is a big Mike Evans guy there. So I've covered a few of my bets so far. The ones that I'm kind of locking in, typically we lock in 12 bets on the side. We got the Leonard Fournette touchdown. It's going to happen at some point. Evans at plus 100, and then I moved on to the 49ers and the Cardinals, and we're working with Kyler Murray plus 110. He did get a rushing touchdown last week, so he's showing more freedom to run the ball again. He was a little gun shy the last month or so because of that shoulder injury, but everything's looking pretty good now for the 49ers or for the Cardinals quarterback. And then if he's going to throw a touchdown, I mean, Hopkins, sure. I'm not betting on a Christian Kirk. I'm not betting on you could bet on a Dan Arnold. That does seem to happen lately. Larry Fitzgerald, I'm not interested. But if you wanted to bet on a Murray passing touchdown, it's got to be Hopkins, right? At plus 100, I think that's the place that I would lean. But I think I'm more comfortable betting with his rushing touchdown here. And then looking purely at the 49ers and how they're going to, move the ball with CJ Beathard and George Kittle back. I think those two have a pretty good connection going back to their days at Iowa. And then if you look at Brandon Ayuk, that guy's been hot. Let's take a look at Ayuk's numbers. I think he's scored a handful of touchdowns lately. So in the last 5 games, I guess technically in the last 7 games, he does have 5 touchdowns. So he's been scoring at a pretty high clip. This was with Nick Mullins last week. I don't know if we have any action of Ayuk with CJ Beathard, but at plus 165, that doesn't seem like terrible odds there. So I'm kind of into this number here. But George Kittle plus 165, that could be kind of fun. I would bet if CJ Beathard's throwing a touchdown, it's going to one of these guys, I think, here. So if you wanted to take one of those guys, I could totally see it. I think I might take this Jeff Wilson touchdown at plus 115 just because there's no goal line back there besides him. We know Mostert's not going to be playing the rest of the year. They don't really have another big back. They got Tevin Coleman, Jerick McKinnon. So Jeff Wilson is the goal line back. So if they get close, that's kind of where I'm leaning. What's going on, MHP? What do you think about the McKinnon rushing and receiving yard? It is so low. Okay, let's take a peek at that. Let's look at receiving numbers first here. So, they don't have McKinnon on this one. And then the receiving, maybe I have to update this. I'm not seeing any rushing or receiving numbers here for Mr. McKinnon. Let me just double check here. So yeah, I'm not seeing anything. I guess it depends on what site you're using, but the Jerick McKinnon overs, we do expect him to get a little bit more run today with no Raheem Mostert, so there's a good chance for him to rack up a handful of catches. Mostert, actually McKinnon had a pretty good game with CJ Beathard earlier in the season, so I'm not shy of Jerick McKinnon. If they upload some things here, we can maybe click on that before the game starts here, but Jerick McKinnon's definitely a guy to keep it in there. Justin, if you got a question, man, you can type it in there and we can get to it when we get to it. But yeah, just on this 49ers Cardinals game, they got DeAndre Hopkins at 81.5. That does seem pretty low. Hopkins hit them pretty hard week 1 for a pretty big game here. Let me just pull this up. And Hopkins has been playing some really good football lately. 136, 169 the last 2 weeks. He went off for 151 against these guys back in week 1. Now that was with Jimmy Garoppolo. So maybe CJ Beth or I'm stupid here. I'm thinking Kyler Murray. Okay, so Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins, that connection has exploded for a lot of high yardage outputs this season. I think if you're taking an over in this game, DeAndre Hopkins at 81.5, that seems really likely to happen. George Kittle, that could be kind of fun to bet into at 15.5 minus 112. I'm interested in that. Ayuk is pretty low, 61.5 too. I think if you're going to bet the over for one of the 49ers, it's got to be Ayuk or Kittle. Jeff Wilson, 9.5. No, we'll maybe look at his rushing ability. Kenyon Drake, 11.5. Sometimes it seems like he gets, he he's been kind of hitting at every other week, it seems like. But for the most part, I think I covered the overs there that I like. At the rushing prop here, Jeff Wilson, 61.5, Kenyon Drake, 54.5, and Kyler Murray, 45.5. I'm not sure I love any of these. Really don't know what the health of Chase Edmonds is going to be, so that's why I'm kind of 50-50 on Kenyon Drake today. But again, we've been kind of talking up Jerick McKinnon. He's definitely a guy to keep an eye on. And we're looking at Jeff Wilson here to be the lead back. I think Wilson's hit that the last maybe the last 2 games. He's been close. So Mr. Jeff Wilson, last week he hit 16 carries for 60 yards. The yards per carry have been low, but we have seen him, have some pretty high outputs earlier too. Now that he's officially the lead back, maybe Jeff Wilson over 61.5. I'd feel more comfortable about the touchdown prop there just because it is plus 115 compared to minus 112. So I think that's where I'm going to lie in terms of touchdown passes, both at 1.5. I could see CJ Beathard being over here. I mean, if the Cardinals are playing from behind, maybe CJ Beathard at 2 touchdowns. I could see him throwing 2 touchdowns today. I'm not too worried about that. Let's take a look here. Anything else on this game? Let me just minimize that. But I think that's pretty much it for the 49ers and the Arizona Cardinals here. Miami Dolphins and the Las Vegas Raiders will be next. Let me just get this basketball question out of the way. So is this a trade here? Kelly Oubre and Miles Turner for Wiseman. And is that Langston Galloway? Who's Gallo? I can't remember who Gallo is. Oubre's been frustrating, but he's been getting a lot of shots up. Miles Turner has been a big part of the rotation in Indiana right now. But Wiseman and Gallo. Is it Gallinari? Gallinari. I do like what I'm seeing from Wiseman, but I think I'm gonna hold on to Oubre and Miles Turner. Oubre's been shooting the ball not very well, but he's been getting a lot of shots up. So I think over time that's going to correct. And they've been drubbed by the Bucks and the Nets, 2 of the best teams in the East. So I think their schedule could get opened up a little bit more as they're playing some of those lower, West Coast teams. So I think I'm still going to hold on to Oubre and Miles Turner. Even though Oubre's been a little bit frustrating, but essentially you're swapping out Wiseman for Turner, which I kind of move that as a push, and then Gallinari for Oubre. I like Gallinari; he's a more consistent player, but I think the upside of Kelly Oubre, we spent a high pick on him. Probably going to hold on to Kelly Oubre for just a little bit longer. Let's give him another week or 2 before we start getting any nervous moves going on. So back to the Dolphins and the Raiders. This one seems like a really fun game here. I think Derek Carr is going to be the QB. Josh Jacobs at minus 106. I'm clicking on this. I think if the Raiders do get close, we're going to see Josh Jacobs find the end zone. It's minus 106, so that's a strong probability of scoring. He's the only guy with negative odds here. And the rest of the group here, you see Salvon Ahmed plus 105, Gaston plus 120. In terms of Dolphins, you got Gesicki at plus 150. Not sure if he's going to play yet. I did notice he was limited this week. Devontae Parker plus 150. Lynn Bowden Jr. 210. Jakeem Grant 225. I'm looking for that Tua touchdown. Tua Tagovailoa. Do you think if he's going to run for a touchdown plus 285? He was able to put up 2 last week, so that could be kind of fun. But I think if you're betting on a Dolphins touchdown, just with the health of Gesicki and Parker kind of questionable, I'd be willing to bet on Salvon Ahmed or Myles Gaskin. Now, I've been struggling with this potential 50-50 split all week in my head. I don't know who it's going to be. Based on body type and running back size, I think Salvon Ahmed would continue to be the goal line back, and Myles Gaskin's kind of the guy in between the 20s, whereas Salvon Ahmed might come in and be the goal line back. So it's kind of tough to call here for the Dolphins. I think if you're betting for a touchdown odd, it would be one of those 2 players, but the Dolphins have been kind of tough to figure out. I don't know if I'm really comfortable recommending bets on the Dolphins side here. If Gesicki plays, he could be a pretty good bet for a touchdown just because it is the Raiders. They did let a lot of points last week to Justin Herbert and the Chargers. And then I guess in terms of Parker, if Parker plays, it is the Raiders. Maybe these guys are the 2. I would maybe lean away from the running backs and maybe call out a Gesicki touchdown. That one might make a little sense to me. And then for the Raiders side, I know it's a little bit stingy matchup with the Dolphins defense, but I like Josh Jacobs to score. This Raiders team is 7-7. They need to win to stay into the hunt. And then there's Darren Waller here at plus 135. That one doesn't seem too crazy. Get some favorable odds for us. Nelson Aguilar, he's been Derek Carr's favorite wide receiver to throw the ball to at plus 190. That seems a little fun, but for me, I'm going to just lean into this Josh Jacobs touchdown. I think they're going to try to give him as much as he can handle, and that's really their best chance to win is to keep running the ball, take their shots with Waller, take their shots with Aguilar, and try to get the points that way. So I do like the Raiders side here. Looking quickly at the touchdown odds, over 1.5 touchdowns for Tua. That could happen here, but we've seen a lot of rushing touchdowns out of this team, so I don't know if I'm comfortable at either 1.5. For the rushing numbers real quick, let me just minimize these guys. So Tua 13.5, Gaston 50.5, and Jacob 69.5. So Gaston's interesting. At plus 100, again, we've kind of been talking about Salvon Ahmed and not really sure how to handle him. But Myles Gaston, we should probably add FF today. Let's just take a look at his numbers because this has been a guy that's been very friendly with the volume. You see 21 of 90, 18 for 91, 16 for 57, 10 for 40. So I think he's somewhere in this range of 10 to 16 carries, 40 to 60 yards, somewhere in that range, and then a 50-50 shot at a touchdown. I do think he's got the receiving volume here. He's going to get a low of 2 to 3 catches. I think that's a pretty good safe bet there too. But Gaston at 50.5, he's probably going to need upwards of 10, 12 carries to hit that, considering if he's a 5-yard per carry type back. Actually, he's a 3.9, so the odds are against it. He's going to need more than probably 12 carries to hit that. So I'm a little bit nervous there. Maybe stay away from the rushing bets here. But again, if there's one guy to bet on, it's probably Josh Jacobs because he is the workhorse. He's going to get the carries. That does make sense to me. And then looking at the receiving numbers real quick, I think I'm more interested in the Gaston receiving over. He is their best receiving back. So I think that one intrigues me the most. Mike Gesicki down here at 36.5. That seems pretty low. Renfro, not interested. Waller at 55.5. I'm taking this. That seems stupid low. Darren Waller 55.5, even though it is minus 118, that feels like easy money there. And then Josh Jacobs, I don't know. I like betting on Josh Jacobs, but maybe not the over for receiving here. Maybe the Gesicki. I think this Mike Gesicki at 36.5. That one, if he's going to play, I know he's got a separated shoulder that he had 2 weeks ago, but if he's going to play, he's been one of Tua's favorite targets. 65, 88. 35, 43, 40, 42. He's been playing pretty consistent in this range here. So if you do like a Dolphins bet here, I think it's Gesicki at 36.5. We just have to monitor and see if he's going to play. They did, pull him last week just short of the game time. So I think that's going to be it for the Dolphins Raiders game. A lot of fun going on there tonight. And then we're going to look at the Kansas City Chiefs and the Atlanta Falcons here. I'm going to work my way backwards. We're going to start with the receiving numbers. We know Julio Jones is not playing, so Calvin Ridley at 83.5. He's been fantastic this year. I don't see why that shouldn't happen again. It's a little high. If it was 73.5, I'd probably jump in it a little bit harder, but the numbers won't be as great. So minus 112 for 83.5. Travis Kelce, I think this is one that's another easy money spot here. He's been the best tight end all season. He's playing against the Falcons. You got to like what happens there. With Tyreek Hill's missed some practices this week with a hamstring injury. I'm just nervous about this game maybe not being as competitive and as important for a guy like Tyreek Hill to play a full game. So at 77.5, I'm not exactly excited about it. It's minus 124, but Atlanta does give up a ton of yards to the receivers here. So that does interest me a little bit, but because it's been beaten down to 124, I might stay away. Le'Veon Bell, people at 21.5. Ito Smith doesn't interest me. Hayden Hurst. Nothing really interests me here, too. Russell Gage. I think I want to take a peek at the touchdown numbers real quick. Let's just see these. And the reason why I like the touchdown odds is because for the most part, these are all plus odds. Travis Kelce, of course, minus 200 to score. That's very likely to happen. Tyreek Hill also very likely to happen. And then Le'Veon Bell, very likely to happen. So the people are hitting these bets here. So maybe for the touchdown odds, I don't love these as much. I typically like getting my plus 115s, my plus 110s, things like that. So you could get out of the the ordinary top 3 players here and go with Hardman or Watkins. I do like Calvin Ridley at plus 135. I think if there's one bet that sticks out amongst these touchdown bets, it will be Calvin Ridley. So we'll click on him. He's really the only guy I'm going to put money on in Atlanta. But as far as Kansas City, people have hit this, pretty hard. Kelsey, Hill, Bell, these are the guys that are likely to score. Maybe one other touchdown scored elsewhere. I don't know if I feel comfortable predicting that there. So I'm going to go with Calvin Ridley. Let's take a peek at the rushing numbers real quick. I wish this would stay minimized. So Mahomes, 16.5, Le'Veon Bell, 56.5, Ito Smith. I'm not betting on any Falcons running backs. Le'Veon Bell is interesting, but the Falcons do have a solid rushing unit. They actually don't allow too many fantasy points to running backs because they are such a funnel, with the quarterback passing to the wide receivers and the tight ends. So for the rushing numbers in this game, I'm interested in Le'Veon Bell, but I think if you had to pick one, maybe you take the Le'Veon Bell. And this actually concerns me because I think they like Darrell Williams the best as their pass catching back. So this one, if I'm doing anything, you got to take the under on Le'Veon Bell and his receiving overs here. But as fun as this game is, there's really nothing that sticks out, or there's nothing really to take advantage of in terms of player prop bets here. They want Patrick Mahomes at 2.5 here. People have been betting the over. So if you want to, this looks like a free spot here. Patrick Mahomes for 3 touchdowns. I could see that pretty easily. But we're going to move on to the Giants and the Ravens. We should probably make this one quick. Lamar Jackson over 1.5 plus 157 for touchdown passes. This one seems pretty low. Let's take a look at this. Lamar Jackson, the last few games, 3 touchdowns, 1 touchdown, 2 touchdowns, 1, 2. So this does seem kind of tricky here. He threw 3 touchdowns last weekend against Jacksonville. So if you're feeling risky, Lamar Jackson can hit 2 touchdowns pretty quickly. I mean, Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews have been playing some good football. He's got Dez Bryant, Miles Boykin catching touchdowns every now and then. So this one interests me, especially at plus 157. That one could be kind of fun to put some on. For rushing props, you got Gus Edwards, 40.5, J.K. Dobbins, 62.5, Lamar, 61.5, Wayne Gallman. We're not betting on the Giants. So I think if you're going to take anything in this Giants game, it's probably J.K. Dobbins. Lamar Jackson, he had 35 yards last week, 124, 94, 51, 55, 58. So it seems a little stretched out there at 61.5. I think I'd rather bet into one of his running backs to hit their over. So JK hit 64, 53, 71, 70 the last 3 games here. So I'm starting to feel a little bit strength with that. 62.5. I think if you like the over on that one, I think that's a proper bet there. And then the receiving numbers here, only Mark Andrews is on the board. I'm going to take Mark Andrews at 48.5. That seems like a free square for money. Let me just pull up Mark Andrews. We're going to click into this one. I like this one a lot. So Mark Andrews, if you've been watching my shows, I feel like I've been saying this every show, but ever since Mark Andrews back in week 10, we saw Nick Boyle go down, season-ending injury. Mark Andrews it's been his 4 best yardage outputs of the season. So I think there's no reason for him not to hit this 48.5. I'm going to roll with that one and feel really comfortable. That's going to be a lock for sure for me. Mark Andrews over 48.5. I really like that one there. And then just for touchdown odds real quick, let's just take a peek at the TD odds. Probably going to like the Mark Andrews touchdown. That worked for us last week. They don't have anything in here. Oh, there it is. Let me just skip this Jets-Browns game. So Lamar Jackson rushing touchdown plus 120, Mark Andrews plus 130, J.K. Dobbins plus 140. Okay, this is it. This is it right here. This is where you want to be. So Lamar Jackson rushing touchdown, that seems pretty juicy there at plus 120. I like that a lot. Mark Andrews plus 130. That feels really, really good too. The last few games, Mark Andrews has 2 touchdowns in the last 3 games. He's a streaky kind of player here, so I could see him fighting a touchdown at plus 130, and then J.K. Dobbins plus 140. I think if you are a serious bettor, you're taking one of these bets, and maybe all 3 of these bets. This is kind of wild. Lamar Jackson plus 120 to score a rushing touchdown. I'll tell you what, I'd rather take. I think Andrews is going to hit the over, so I'm okay with leaving that. But man, I'm going to have some decisions to make because I feel really strongly about all 3 of these guys scoring tomorrow at some point. I do like the Ravens side. So maybe I just lean into that Mark Andrews receiving over, and then consider the Lamar rushing touchdown or the J.K. Dobbins touchdown. If they do get close, I do think it's one of these three players scoring here. So this is fantastic odds, guys, for them to score any touchdown. Any other player to score, I'm not really excited about. You can do a wild shot in the dark here on Gus Edwards plus 225, maybe Marquise at 200, but for the most part, I'm trusting what I'm seeing here from Lamar and J.K. Dobbins. So that one's a really fun game there. I'm excited about those odds for sure. We're going on about 30 minutes here. I didn't really want to do a full hour show. I have some things to take care of before the noon games today. So we're just gonna breeze through some of these touchdown odds, I think, for the rest of the slate. We were kind of talking about Browns, Jets. Nick Chubb at minus 167. Like, he's probably going to score for sure against the Jets. It's beaten down here pretty badly, but 167, that could be some free money, even though it's not a lot of money there. Kareem Hunt, maybe there, plus 120. Jarvis Landry, plus 165. Rashard Higgins, 225. You could bet on one of the tight ends to score. But I think if you're going to take anything in this game, Nick Chubb's free square at minus 167. I don't know if there's any odds boost this weekend, or you could fall into the Kareem Hunt plus 120. I think everyone's going to get a chance at the goal line here between Chubb and Hunt. So maybe that interests me the most for touchdown numbers. We already covered the Ravens. Let's take a peek at the Chicago Bears. David Montgomery scoring a touchdown, minus 175. I don't think that's appropriate for us to recommend that bet, though. It's not a big money winner. If James Robinson does play, he would be the guy that I'd take for the Jaguars, but I'm not really feeling the Jaguars. So I think just, the fact that this is minus 175, A-Rob's minus 121, I don't think I can bet on a touchdown in that game. This one's interesting, the Colts and the Steelers, because as you see here, there's nobody in the negatives. These are all positive odds here. And this is a game featuring two of the best defenses in the league. Jonathan Taylor's been on a hot streak the last 3 games. James Conner, it's his first game back in a while. Nyheim Hines hasn't scored a touchdown in a while. Chase Claypool plus 180. He's actually the best receiver odds here, plus 180. Deontay 225. Juju 240. So one of those guys is going to score. One of them is going to score. And then Benny Snell, nothing there with James Conner back. Eric Ebron, don't know if I trust him. So you're basically looking at Jonathan Taylor for the Colts and maybe T.Y. Hilton for the Colts here. Maybe Zach Pascal. He just had 2 touchdowns last week. I don't know if I feel great about that. If you're going to bet on anyone to score, it's probably got to be Taylor or Nyheim Hines. And I think this might be a Hines game. Steelers are pretty stingy in the run department. I think we could see a lot of Nyheim Hines in the short area passing game here, because that's going to be a fierce pass rush coming at Ben. At Phillip Rivers. I think he's going to be smart enough to dump it off here. So if you're betting on one from the Colts game, Nyheim Hines interests me. And then for the Steelers, you're sitting with James Conner. Questionable there at plus 150. I'm open to it. He has had a couple weeks off. He could be really fresh and run hot. I'm interested there. Claypool plus 180. He hasn't done much lately. Deontay Johnson, though, is probably the one guy here. If you're going to take a Pittsburgh receiver to score, I think it's got to be Deontay Johnson. If you want some big boom money, James Washington at plus 500 could be kind of fun. But this one, you probably can hear it in my voice, the way I'm kind of questioning things. I don't know what's really going to happen in this one, so I think I feel comfortable more in some of the other games here. But if you're taking a Steeler, take Deontay probably. And if you're taking a Colt, I like Nyheim Hines at plus 150. I think he could be a sneaky player going up against the Steelers here. Let me get back to those player props page. And we'll move on to the next game here. Let me see what that is. So we just covered Colts, Steelers. Now we're going to cover the Bengals and the Texans. Take David Johnson to score, guys. David Johnson at minus 112. I'm going to lock this one in. It's the Cincinnati Bengals. We just saw Benny Snell have a pretty dang good game, and we know Duke Johnson's out, so don't overthink it. I think this is an easy money square. It's a free spot, minus 112. I'm going to lock that one in. Gio Bernard scored 2 touchdowns last week going up against the Texans. We've looked at it before. The Texans allow the most rushing touchdowns on the season. I think they're tied with 2 other teams. We just looked at this. They're at 17, but they're tied with the Raiders and the Lions for the most rushing touchdowns. They've also allowed 2 additional receiving touchdowns here. So very generous to the running backs. They also allow the most rushing yards here. But it's Gio Bernard and the Bengals. Do we trust this? Maybe put a little bit on it at the plus 108. I'm feeling very confident in one of the receivers scoring tomorrow, whether that's Cooks, Kiki Cutie, maybe Chad Hansen. But I think if you're betting on a receiver, give me Kiki Cutie at plus 190 compared to the 120 here. I think I like this one better. So if you want to bet on a Houston rushing touchdown or a receiving touchdown, you take David Johnson. If you're betting on a throwing touchdown, you're going to take Kiki Cutie here. And then for the Bengals, it's really only Gio Bernard or maybe T. Higgins. T. Higgins plus 200, but that's not really a comfortable bet there, guys. So I think I'm going to lean into David Johnson on this one. The Panthers and the Washington football team. There's a lot of questions in this one yet. We don't know who the quarterback is for Washington. Alex Smith took first-team reps and got a full practice in yesterday, so that's interesting. We might see him over Dwayne Haskins. And then Antonio Gibson's been practicing as well. So there's potential wrinkle there for McKissick, for Gibson, for Peyton Barber. So none of those odds I'm a big fan of. It looks like they're thinking Antonio Gibson plays here. He's at minus 121 for a touchdown. So on that side of things, also Terry McLaurin's going to be out. So with this being said, I think if you're going to bet on a Washington touchdown and thinking of in terms of the best odds, give me Logan Thomas, plus 200. No Terry McLaurin. Thomas went over 100 yards last week, like 10 or I think 11 catches. Logan Thomas is going to be the leading receiver for this team. So I'm going to lean into that, I think. That one does feel the best. Let me just check my numbers here. We got a lot of numbers on the list here. I like a lot of guys to score here today. So a lot of fun in this one, but I think Thomas excites me the most for a touchdown bet. For the Washington or for the Carolina Panthers side, you see Mike Davis minus 121. That does seem likely. But Curtis Samuel is their best receiver odds at 220. Robbie, 250. DJ Moore plus 275. I don't love it, but if I'm going to take one, I'm probably going to take DJ Moore. I still think he's the best receiver on that team. He had the best game last weekend against a tough opponent in Green Bay, so I think he's going to be the struggle target. Plus 275, it's unlikely to happen, but he is their best receiver, and I think Washington's going to make them throw the football. So if you want to bet on a Carolina receiver, DJ Moore interests me a little bit, but nothing that I love here in this Washington. This is going to be a low-scoring game. This might be a game where both teams, score only 1 or 2 touchdowns, so not a very exciting game. Broncos and Chargers, there's a lot of injury reports in this one that we have to watch too, especially on the Chargers side. But Melvin Gordon, they're basically penciling him in to score at minus 139. Austin Eckler doesn't really score touchdowns. He's minus 112. I don't really feel comfortable with that. Keenan Allen plus 120. We don't know if he's going to play. Maybe Noah Fant here at plus 180. If there's a non-Melvin Gordon Bronco that I'm betting on, it's probably Melvin Gordon, maybe Tim Patrick. But I do like what Noah Fant did last week. So plus 180, I'm intrigued a little bit there. And then in terms of the Chargers side here, who's going to catch these Justin Herbert touchdowns? Is it going to be Eckler? Is it going to be Keenan Allen? Maybe Mike Williams? Maybe Tyron Johnson at plus 300. He's been playing good football. And then Jalen Guyton plus 300. I don't know. There's a lot of questions here. The one guy that's interesting, though, is Donald Parham. That's Hunter Henry's backup tight end here at plus 300. Just keep an eye on him. You can maybe throw just a small amount on it, but I'm interested to see how the young, I think he's a rookie or second-year tight end. I'm interested to see how he looks in his first extended duty. And then, I don't know, this is a tough game to bet on. I'm not really sure if I like betting in it. Melvin Gordon minus 139, maybe you just take that free money. And then it's hard to predict what the Chargers are going to do. So I'm not really too comfortable there. But the Rams and the Seahawks, this is the game that features a really damn good defense in the Los Angeles Rams. The Seahawks defense has been playing better lately, but their offense has been not playing very well. So you got DK Metcalf with the plus 105 to score, Carson plus 120, Lockett plus 120. I don't know if we're interested in him. But if the Seahawks are going to score, I think you have to take one of Metcalf or Chris Carson. Metcalf, he just seems like one of those guys where we know Jalen Ramsey got the best of him in the first matchup earlier in the year. He just seems like one of those guys that he's going to prove you wrong. If you did something or you were able to stop him, he's going to make sure that he gets the win in the second time around. So I'm interested in DK Metcalf plus 105. I'd rather take probably some of the other bets that we've been looking at here. Like give me the Lamar Jackson at the plus 120 if you're picking between bets. But definitely interested in one of these two guys scoring. For the Rams, This is even more difficult because Darrell Henderson, Malcolm Brown, these are the two lead backs tomorrow. They're going to work them in some weird split. And Malcolm Brown did score 2 rushing touchdowns against this team earlier in the year. So Malcolm, I think if they're going to bet on a rushing touchdown, it's going to be Malcolm Brown. I think that's the guy that you want to pick. If they get inside the 5, they're going to bang him in there. And then for receivers, Woods, Kupp. Kupp hasn't been scoring touchdowns this year. It has been Bob Woods leading that department. I don't really feel comfortable in it. This whole game, man, this game is a tough one to call. I really don't have a lot of confidence in calling out any bets. Tyler Higbee at plus 350, that does seem like a tough a big win for you if you want to put a few bit money on that. But 350, he did score last weekend. I guess I could see Tyler Higbee scoring there. The Eagles and the Cowboys. Give me that Jalen Hurts rushing touchdown at plus 135. And I'm going to actually kick one of these bets out here, and we'll see what happens. I do like Darren Waller. I like Calvin Ridley, Lamar, David Johnson. Man, we like a lot of these bets here. I'm going to remove that Logan Thomas touchdown, even though I think he's probably going to score. I'm gonna take that Jalen Hurts rushing touchdown for tomorrow or for Sunday. That is tomorrow. Miles Sanders minus 112, Ezekiel Elliott minus 112. I don't know if I trust those two. Pollard at plus 150. That could be fun. Amari Cooper plus 190. He did struggle against Philadelphia earlier in the year though. Dallas Goedert plus 190, CD Lamb 225, Zach Ertz 220. I think if you're gonna bet on anything in this game, it's got to be the Jalen Hurts rushing touchdown. I do expect Hurts to probably combine for 3 touchdowns at least, whether that's 2 rushing and 1 passing or 2 passing and 1 rushing, something like that. But I think the odds for him to score are pretty dang good in this one. And then everything else is just kind of hard to predict. We don't really know what to do with the Cowboys. I usually don't cover Sunday night's show on this game, but there's some heavy monsters here. 225, minus 225, minus 225 for Henry and Adams, minus 167 for Aaron Jones. Just a quick look at this. I'm probably taking A.J. Brown at plus 125. So let's just we'll just breeze through some of these passing numbers real quick. We're going on about 42 minutes here. I'll hang out maybe another 8 minutes. We'll make a 50-minute show today. But let's see, where did we leave off here? So in terms of passing numbers, I mean, Mahomes, 330.5. That's pretty dang high. He's probably going to get it, though. Lamar Jackson, we can't bet on that. Trubisky, 332. We're watching Allen Robinson, I think, first. There's a lot of injury reports and stuff, so it's hard for me to bet on these overs for passing numbers. People are liking the under in this Russell Wilson, 272. I think I would as well. Maybe the same with Jared Goff. I think this is going to be a rock fight for the most part. Jalen Hurts, Andy Dalton, not really feeling those numbers. For TD passes, though, I do think Tom Brady over, if you're betting on him, if you think he can hit 3 touchdowns today, plus 130, that makes sense to me. CJ Beathard, also a sneaky guy at over 1.5. If he hits the 2, that could be 1 Ayuk and 1 Kittle. He can dump one off to McKinnon. I do think CJ Beathard has some intrigue here and a pretty good odd at plus 124. Derek Carr over 1.5, Tua over 1.5. These seem a little bit more risky. Patrick Mahomes, if he's going to hit 3, I mean, minus 121, that does seem like kind of a free square. And then I'm not taking the Matt Ryan one there. Even though people are hitting this one at minus 159, people are leaning into this one. So it looks like 2 touchdowns for Matt Ryan. I'm kind of interested in this Lamar Jackson over 1.5. If he hits the 2 touchdowns, really good chance it's Marquise Brown, Mark Andrews, one of those 2 scores. So that kind of, goes back to the touchdown props that we were looking at earlier. The Bears, Mitch Trubisky over 1.5. People are betting this one at 2 touchdowns. So maybe this looks like a free square spot for you. Rivers, Roethlisberger, again, super uncomfortable here. Deshaun Watson's thrown probably for 2 touchdowns. And then Jared Goff, Russell Wilson, we really can't lean into that. But then, there you go. Jalen Hurts again at plus 100 to get 2 passing touchdowns. I think I'm into that there. Let's just take a quick look. We're going to start down here at the rushing numbers. Jalen Hurts, 55.5. Sanders, 80.5. Both really good matchups for both of these players here. I think I'd rather take the touchdown numbers just because you see plus 135. You're betting on minus 112 odds here. But the chances of one of these guys hitting this is very good. I think I'm going to lean Jalen Hurts, though. Rams, Seahawks. Not a lot of confidence for me in these backs here. Maybe it's Chris Carson. at that seems a little low. I think Chris Carson should hit 50 yards. So that's the one that sticks out the most to me. David Johnson, 56.5. I think I'd rather take his receiving over, and not interested in Watson or Bernard. This is a tough one too. I don't really have a lot of confidence in the Colts Steelers rushers. David Montgomery, over 80.5. I'm taking that. It's Jacksonville. I think you guys should take that too. That one seems like a really good bet there. Lamar Jackson, 61.5. We kind of looked at this earlier. I think I did say I like the Dobbins, 62.5. And we kind of looked at all that. So let me just go to the receiving numbers real quick. Roll on down to the bottom. So Eagles, Cowboys, Dallas Goedert, 37.5. That seems kind of low. Sanders, 17.5. They don't really throw to him that much. But Dalton Schultz at 33.5. That kind of intrigues me. Let me pull up Mr. Schultz. Let's just take a peek at what he did earlier in the year against Philadelphia. So 6 for 53. Philadelphia, you can't score against tight ends. So Dalton Schultz over 33.5 plus 105. I think I'm going to recommend that one. That one seems kind of fruitful. Goddard 37.5. We did say we like that. Lamb, I can't really bet on the Cowboys receivers. It seems like those guys kind of just take turns and it's hard to predict. And then same with the receivers. I don't know who to take on the Philly receiving side. I do like Goddard. I do like Ertz. I think those two numbers are low enough to get me. But Dalton Schultz actually is the best looking one at plus 105 there. Rams Seahawks. No clue what to do with this one. It's super tough to bet on Russ Wilson passing the ball right now. DK Metcalf 70.5. That seems high. If that was 60.5, I'm taking it. Lockett 60.5. I don't know if I can trust it. Carson 20.5. None of these numbers really stick out, guys. I don't really like any of these. I think this could be a pretty good rock fight for us on Sunday. Bengals and the Texans. David Johnson 20.5. Take this one, guys. If you're taking any over in this game, it's got to be David Johnson over 28.5 receiving yards. Again, Duke Johnson's not playing. This is a smash play. This is one of the best plays, I think, of this slate. So David Johnson over 28.5. Not really confident elsewhere here. We kind of looked at these numbers too. I'm not really confident in this Colts Steelers game. Claypool at 41.5. He did hit 54 last weekend, so maybe that one makes sense. Deontay seems kind of low here too. But I can't trust really anybody in this game at the moment. Monty 25.5. But yeah, it looks like that's everything that we covered here. So with that being said, we're going on about 47 minutes here. If anyone has any quick questions, we can rifle those off. Otherwise, I'm going to probably get out of here. It's about 10:48. We got football in an hour. We got football in a little over an hour here. So I'm going to what I got to do now is I have to lock in these bets on the website. So if you want to check the link below in the YouTube description, I'm going to be inserting my favorite bets here. And I don't know. Good luck to everybody today. I will be going. I think I'm going live at 6 o'clock tonight. It's 50-50. You can't hold me to that to a T. I'm not sure what's going on with family and dinner or whatever is going on. So I'm planning for 6 o'clock. We'll see. But I just want to thank everybody in the chat room. Thank you guys for your time. Thank you for listening. And enjoy the games today. Good luck in your championship round. And we'll see you guys in another video. Peace.